Jerry Gidel, the one and only analyst from Chicago, from the Midland Research. He's going to speak about the market reaction over the WASDE report and his previous predictions. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So Jerry, what did you think about the market reaction after the WASDE report? Soybeans for the January position is up 11 to 11.6, and to March of 2021, 11.67. So how do you see the market reaction for soybeans? And then we talk about corn.
Well, it ended up going into yesterday's report. I think you've kind of said I was a little cautious about the USDA and that maybe not changing as much as some of the optimistic people had out there. Long time tradition of watching the USDA looking at their December supply-demand reports, because they have a tough job. They got to look at also, what the stocks might be next month, what the final production is going to be, and also they also have a tendency to say, well, our numbers we put so much effort into in the fall, they should be able to go at least hang in there till January. But yesterday's soybean number. And I did allude to the fact that maybe our crush number was pretty strong, as it was a record back in October by 195 plus million, and that 3 or 4 million higher than the previous record, and so the possibility of some adjustment there did occur. They did make an adjustment down to 15 million, and that took us down to 175 million carryover stock. Unfortunately, I think there was a lot of people. And particularly, this kind of went with today's markets once we rallied right into the time of the release of the report by, I think we're 10 or 12 cents higher, maybe more on the prices. And then when it came out, it wasn't as good as 150 or something. Well, it's still a very tight number. So let's don't disregard the fact that the 175 is a very impressive number. That's actually a stocks to use ratio, which is how we try to compare this year against previous years and how big the crop is and what the demand is on a worldwide basis and how that impacts our carryover stocks. The 3.9% ratio that is calculated after this 175 is the lowest number since 2013-14, when it was down at 2.8%. Now, the interesting factor is that because of the demand, overall demand levels, because we're at record crush levels right now, and we're not record beans, but we're up there. And that all of a sudden that year when we had 92 million in ending carryover stock, and that actually was at the far end of the year. It might have been lower than that sometime during the year, but the final number in carryover stocks in the end of 2014, there September 1, was only 92 million, which is still. And I think that this market is well aware of the fact that if something happens in South America here, and that on weather in both Argentina and Brazil, it doesn't always have to be Brazil here, and the situation dealing with a normal, if you want to say normal La Niña, and I don't think we have one right now, by the way, is the fact that a normal impact would be on southern Brazil and Argentina. They actually did take 1 million metric tons off of the USDA's estimate, by the way, this month. So they're tipping the hat in both corn and beans, 1 million off, by the way, on the USDA's expectations because of the current weather, the lack of maybe the planning progress as it needs to be, and maybe just the idea that La Niña is going to have an impact. Now, I think the scenario on beans in Brazil is also quite interesting. The CONAB decided, hey, we're fine. We're leaving it at 133, 133 and a half versus 134, I think it was. But in general, only 500,000 metric ton down. But I understand that beans can hang in there, and it's a long time till we get to February and March when we get harvested. But at the same time, boy, when you talk about moisture deficits, and at this point we're at between mid-September and now December, we're at the lowest level of rainfall on an overall basis in Mato Grosso. That's not a great trend. Now, I know they're trying to talk about things changing and all that kind of stuff as you go forward, and every weather forecaster in the world wants to come up with the perfect timing to tell you when it's changed. I guess I'm willing to be a little bit more realistic about when the rains actually show up. Then I'll determine if that crop is going to be that high. Last year, by the way, we were only 126, so we're already projecting 6, 7, 8 million more. That's a pretty hefty jump.
Yes, Jerry, and we have to remember that there was a huge change in the ending stocks if we compare from what the USDA was projecting in the middle of the year.
Oh, huge a difference. We were having numbers, I think, if I can remember right, and I think I put that in my weekly my weekly update after the report, and that's where I think you pointed it out. We're over 600 million was the projected number back in not that far ago, June till now. That's not even 6 months at this point. We've made a huge difference, and to some extent, maybe too much optimism about yield, maybe not as much optimism about Chinese buying, maybe not too much optimism about how big a crop we're having in South America. All those things combine to a dramatically different look on our carryover stock. And as I said, we're really on a knife edge here on where we're at on situations on U.S. supply demand and how much carryover we have or don't have. Because at this point, the prospects of 2 to 4 or maybe even half a bushel, of yield here on January. Geez, that's 80. You take half a bushel off of 80 acres, 80 million acres. That's 40 million. 40 million off of 175. That makes things quite interesting and getting closer and closer to that absolute 2.8% stocks use ratio we mentioned earlier.
How do you see that developing for the next 2 weeks or months?
Well, this is an interesting time of year where people get a little less enthusiastic to have positions on. They have holidays going on. I think that's also part of the reason why that we've had somewhat of a lackluster situation, if you will, and even from our buyers. Let's not forget here that we had such a huge impact of Chinese buying starting back in August and September, and they were up there all the way up until the November crop report. We've had a few minor numbers that have occurred on a low-level situation since then that put on the totals for China, but we haven't had overnight sales. So that's 100,000 ton sale to a boat, which is usually about 120,000 tons for a Panamax type situation. So that's interesting in itself. That doesn't mean I think China doesn't understand what's going on. I think the one thing that they also don't want to do, and they're astute traders, they don't think that if they don't have to press the button, let's see if it'll go nowhere and we'll get better information about South America. If South America starts to turn not so good, they'll be right back in here, and that might be a big purchase right at one time, and that could really shake this market up. But right now, the magic number seems to be $12 to $12.12 or 15 cents, wherever the highs were. We're back there a few years back, and if we get above that number, then we can really get fired up. But maybe the wheat's maybe telling us where we're going. Boy, we had a heck of a rally the last few days.
Yes, I was going to jump on that exactly. The USDA has not made any change about wheat, But what do you think explains this rally?
Well, the USDA made some minor changes in the U.S. We did see I think it was 10 million increase in exports, and then they suddenly took 5 million off of imports. That's kind of, kind of house cleaning type of deal. The big news, though, was the international estimate they had, and that they took down the stocks 4 million, and actually the trade was looking for a 1 million increase in stocks. They took it down 4 million, and interestingly enough, the biggest part of that scenario was, of all things, China adjusting their feed demand. And there has been indications, because of the high corn prices in China, and that the area, the North China Plain, which was from Shanghai to Beijing, is really looking at feeding a lot of wheat. And so they put that into their judgments, and that helped bring down the stocks in the world. I think that's part of the data, but I think the other thing that's been really fired things up here since Wednesday was President Putin's statement that he was quite concerned about food inflation in Russia. Now, when he makes a comment, people kind of sit up and, salute. And so the Ag Ministry kind of said, oh, we're going to be looking at different things, and maybe we'll look at, they've been talking about a so-called quota for February through June. About 15 million metric tons is what they've been throwing around here, but they haven't really made that statement. And that's the kind of the way that the Russians try to calm things down without saying anything particularly. But at the same time, there was also talk, and the rumors really got going yesterday and it got really going today, was the fact that the idea is to have a 2,000 ruble export tax on wheat. Now that comes out to about $27.5, $28, something like that in U.S. currencies, and that, or in a worldwide pricing situation, I should say, from there. And so that really got people's attention, and it helped push the March Chicago wheat over $6, and it was off to the races then. Technically, there were lots of short covering, because it really, we have not had much of a wheat market really since early part of November. It's been kind of sliding sideways and lower. There's been some rains in parts of the Southwest U.S., and I don't think it's been that great. Our crop conditions are still 46%, the last one we have. And also the big thing that also came out from their Ag Ministry, or excuse me, I wouldn't say that, that the Soviet Khan, which I think is a very important think tank or organization in China, actually reduced their crop for the coming year from 81 million down to 76.8 million, which makes a lot of sense considering that they had a very poor type of fall for actually getting their wheat seeded, and they pointed to the fact that the abandonment acres could rise from 1.8 million hectares last year up to 3.2 million hectares this year, and we're talking about 1.6 of 1.8. That's up there 80-90% jump from there. And so the prospects of having a smaller crop next year, I think, also added to today's enthusiasm. And in general, issues and how things happen in South America, how the crop size down there comes through. They did slice a little bit off of Brazil, but didn't change much in Argentina's wheat. And then I guess the last thing in the whole world wheat situation, the USDA only increased their expectations for Australia's crop from the 28.5 they had last month to only 30 million metric tons. Now, I'd have to say not many people in the trade think where are the numbers at. They're a lot closer to 32, maybe even higher than that. So at this point, that could be a calming effect if we get more ideas out of that. But Australia's got a real problem. They have not been able to sell much wheat to, China. That's one of their longtime customers. And they're in a kind of I don't know what you want to call it, I guess a food fight over the idea that Australia has been supporting the U.S. on the various tariffs and ideas like that. And so China is trying to, they're cut back on some of their beef purchases, they're cut back on some of their barley purchases, they're cut back on some of their wheat purchases from Australia. So, so far, China hasn't been able to muscle Australia to change their mind. But at this point, it's an interesting situation. It puts their wheat in some other places and maybe substitutes some of other people's wheat into China.
Yes, another thing I can add is that Argentina is having some trouble to ship their wheat crop because of port workers' strike.
Oh, yes, that's been, isn't it about every other day we seem to have a report coming out of Argentina, Buenos Aires, Rosario, wherever you like to say. It seems like the crushing situation is just as, having problems just as much as port shipping, things like that. And then, of course, the producers down there are not in a big rush to be a seller. The currencies are going up, devaluating or slipping all the time. It's a difficult situation in Buenos Aires right now. And unfortunately, I don't know that I see anything out in front of us that's going to change that for the agricultural world in Argentina. But, at this point, hopefully there's some resolution of that. One little last kicker in this whole Argentina scenario, I'm not sure you noticed it, but somebody pointed out, I saw that the Paraná River that comes down from Paraguay goes right down past Rosario and Buenos Aires is the lowest in 50 years.
Yes,
whoa,
that's right.
That's very tough to end up getting many barges down there to even get supplies, because there's a lot of traffic that comes down from Paraguay and then gets processed down in either of those two areas, or just goes out as a sale off the two ports there in Argentina. So things are, very difficult for people in that area, unfortunately.
Yes, and what's your marketing recommendation right now?
On the wheat, definitely want to be a holder of it right here. I don't know that we popped up above $6 here on the wheat, and that I kind of feel like that the same 630, 640 zone on March is still going to be a tough zone here. And also the same thing on beans, the $12 mark. I think we're the next couple of weeks here as we go through this holiday period in corn and soybeans and wheat, we're bouncing around and we'll continue to watch weather in South America but I think there's still, I think there's going to be kind of a pause here, because I don't think there's a continuing the pause, I should say. It doesn't mean I'm bearish. I just don't think that we're going to take off. And a quick comment on that, on the corn stocks at 1.7 are down and down dramatically from where they were in the spring. But until we get a number that we can talk about, down below 1.5, maybe 1.4 billion bushels here in the U.S., I don't know if that's going to kick off something for some magic numbers like $5.
Okay, that was it for now. Jerry Gidel from Chicago, Illinois.
Thank you very much, Louis, and we'll see you next week.